When the hospital calls at 3 a.m. with your ex-wife's name, you have two choices: hang up or show up. Daniel Brooks chose the latter, and it changed everything. What happens when a divorce you thought was final becomes a second chance you never asked for? When duty turns into something deeper? This is a story about broken hearts, unfinished business, and the courage to care when it would be easier to walk away. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The phone screamed into the silence of Daniel Brooks's bedroom at exactly 3:17 a.m. He jerked awake, heart hammering, one arm shooting out reflexively across the mattress before he remembered. There was no one there. Hadn't been for 3 years. The other side of the bed was cold, sheets pulled tight, untouched. The phone shrieked again, vibrating against the wood of his nightstand with an insistence that felt almost violent in the darkness. Daniel grabbed it, squinting against the sudden blue glare. Unknown number. His first thought was Maya. His daughter. Something happened to Maya. His throat closed as he swiped to answer, already sitting up, already reaching for the jeans he'd left draped over the chair. Hello? Mr. Brooks? A woman's voice, professional, clipped, clinical. This is St. Catherine's Medical Center calling. I'm calling regarding Laura Miles. Daniel froze. The name hit him like a fist to the sternum. Laura, not Maya. Laura, his ex-wife. What? The word came out hoarse, disbelieving. Mr. Miles was involved in a serious motor vehicle accident earlier this evening. She's currently in emergency surgery. You're listed as her emergency contact. Daniel's mind went blank, then flooded all at once. Laura. Surgery. Emergency contact, that couldn't be right. They'd been divorced for 3 years. 3 years of careful distance, of polite exchanges when dropping Maya off, of rebuilding separate lives in the same small city. Why would he still be... Mr. Brooks? Are you there? Yes, is she... He couldn't finish the question. His mouth had gone dry. She's critical but stable. The surgical team is working now. We need family here as soon as possible. Family. The word was a knife. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Daniel heard himself say. He hung up before the nurse could respond, before his brain could catch up with his mouth, before the reality of what he'd just agreed to could fully land. For a moment he just sat there on the edge of his bed, phone clutched in his hand, staring at nothing. Laura. God, when was the last time he'd even said her name out loud? He dressed in the dark, moving on autopilot, jeans, t-shirt, hoodie, keys, wallet. His hands were shaking. He noticed it when he tried to tie his shoes and had to start over twice. By the time he made it to his truck, the first edge of shock was giving way to something else, something older and more complicated. The streets were empty. The whole city felt hollow, suspended in that dead zone between night and morning when even the bars had closed and the early risers hadn't yet woken. Daniel drove faster than he should have, running 2 yellow lights, his mind churning. Emergency surgery. Critical but stable. What did that even mean, and why? Why was he still her emergency contact? They'd been meticulous about the divorce. Lawyers, mediators, splitting everything down the middle with the kind of cold efficiency that had made the whole thing feel like a business transaction. The house went to him because he could afford the mortgage. Laura took the savings. They divided the furniture, the photos, the careful life they'd built over 15 years of marriage. Maya had been 19, away at college, spared the worst of it. It had been quiet, civilized, brutal in its politeness. So why hadn't Laura updated her paperwork? The hospital emerged from the darkness like something out of a nightmare. Too bright, all harsh fluorescent white and sterile glass. Daniel parked crookedly in the ER lot and ran. The automatic doors hissed open, a blast of antiseptic air and recycled cold. The waiting room was nearly empty, just a teenage kid holding a bloody towel to his hand and an elderly woman staring blankly at a muted television. Daniel went straight to the desk. Laura Miles, he said, breathless. I got a call. She's in surgery. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman with graying hair, typed something without looking up. Relation? Daniel hesitated. I'm her... What was he? Ex-husband sounded wrong. Emergency contact felt clinical. I'm Daniel Brooks. You called me. She glanced up then, something shifting in her expression. Sympathy, maybe. Or pity. Take a seat, Mr. Brooks. Someone will be out to speak with you shortly. I need to know what's happening. The doctor will update you as soon as possible. Please, have a seat. There was no arguing with that tone. Daniel backed away from the desk, felt his legs carry him toward the plastic chairs bolted to the floor. He didn't sit. Couldn't. Instead, he paced, hands shoved deep in his pockets, every nerve in his body screaming. 15 minutes passed, then 20. He should call Maya. The thought hit him like ice water, their daughter. She needed to know. But what would he even say? Your mother's been in an accident. No, I don't know what happened. No, I don't know if she's going to be okay. His phone was in his hand before he'd made a conscious decision. He pulled up Maya's contact, thumb hovering over the call button. 3:52 a.m. She'd be asleep. Safe in her dorm room 2 hours north, dreaming whatever 22-year-olds dreamed about. Finals, friends, her boyfriend probably. The quiet kid with the glasses she'd brought home at Thanksgiving. What was his name? Connor? Cameron? Daniel couldn't call her. Not yet. Not until he knew something real. He pocketed the phone and resumed pacing. The ER was too quiet. He could hear everything. The hum of the vending machine in the corner, the squeak of a nurse's shoes on linoleum somewhere down a hallway, his own breathing. Every sound felt magnified, unnatural. Laura. He tried to remember the last time he'd seen her, really seen her, not just glimpsed her in passing. It had been, 2 months ago? Maya's birthday dinner. They'd met at that Italian place downtown, the one Maya loved, sat across from each other making small talk while their daughter played peacekeeper, steering conversation towards safe topics. Work, weather, Maya's classes. Laura had looked good. Tired maybe, but good. She'd cut her hair shorter, just above her shoulders. Wore a blue sweater he didn't recognize. They'd split the check. Said goodbye in the parking lot. That was it. And now she was somewhere in this building, broken and bleeding, and he was the person they'd called. Mr. Brooks? Daniel spun around. A doctor stood in the doorway, young, serious-faced, still wearing surgical scrubs. There was blood on his sleeve. I'm Dr. Patel. I've been overseeing Miss Miles's surgery. Daniel crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. How is she? She's alive, Dr. Patel said, and Daniel felt something in his chest unclench just slightly. But her injuries are severe. She was hit by a drunk driver running a red light. T-bone collision, driver's side. The impact caused significant trauma, fractured ribs, collapsed lung, internal bleeding. We've managed to stabilize her, but the next 24 hours are critical. Daniel heard the words, but they didn't quite land. His brain was still stuck on, she's alive. Can I see her? She's being moved to the ICU now. She's sedated and on a ventilator. You can see her, but she won't be conscious. I don't care. I need to see her. Dr. Patel studied him for a moment, then nodded. Follow me. They walked through a maze of corridors, everything painted the same institutional beige, lit by the same harsh lights. Daniel's shoes squeaked on the floor. He focused on that sound, on putting one foot in front of the other, because if he stopped moving, he might fall apart. The ICU was quieter than he'd expected. Dimmer. Doctor. Patel led him to a room near the nurse's station and paused outside the door. She looks worse than she is, he said quietly. The machines, the tubes, they're helping her. Try to remember that. Then he pushed the door open and stepped aside. Daniel entered slowly, as if approaching something holy or fragile. The room was small, crowded with equipment. Monitors beeped softly, displaying numbers and waves Daniel didn't understand. An IV pole stood sentinel beside the bed, but none of that registered. Not really, because all Daniel could see was Laura. She was so still. That was the first thing that hit him. Laura had never been still. She'd always been in motion, cooking, cleaning, organizing, planning. Even in sleep, she'd been restless, stealing covers, shifting positions. But now she lay there like something carved from wax, tubes running from her mouth and arms, a ventilator breathing for her with mechanical precision. Her face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. There was a bandage across her temple. Her hands, always so busy, rested motionless on top of the thin hospital blanket. Daniel couldn't move. "We'll give you some privacy," Dr. Patel said from somewhere behind him. "A nurse will check in every 15 minutes. If anything changes, press the call button." Daniel nodded without turning around. He heard the door close softly. Then he was alone with her. He didn't know how long he stood there, frozen, just staring. It could have been seconds, could have been hours. Time felt broken, unfixed. Finally, he moved. One step, another. Until he was beside the bed, looking down at the woman who'd been his wife, his partner, his best friend. Until she wasn't. "Laura," he whispered. The machines beeped. The ventilator hissed. She didn't move. Daniel's legs gave out and he sank into the chair someone had placed beside the bed. His hands were shaking again, worse now. He pressed them against his thighs, but it didn't help. "I don't—" His voice cracked. He tried again. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do here." The confession fell into the silence of the room and disappeared. He'd imagined seeing Laura again, of course. In the first year after the divorce, he'd imagined it constantly. Running into her at the grocery store, at Maya's graduation, maybe at some hypothetical future wedding. He'd rehearsed conversations in his head, practiced being casual, unaffected. "Hey, how've you been?" "Yeah, I'm good, real good. Take care." Never this. Never her broken and unconscious in a hospital bed while he sat helpless beside her. "You still have me listed as your emergency contact," Daniel said quietly, speaking to the unconscious woman, to the machines, to himself. "Did you forget? Or did you—" He couldn't finish. Didn't know how to. The minutes crawled past. Daniel watched the monitors, the rise and fall of Laura's chest synchronized to the ventilator. In, out, mechanical, alive. Somewhere around 5 a.m., exhaustion hit him like a wave. His eyes burned. His body ached from tension, but he couldn't leave. The thought of standing up, walking out of this room, going home, it was impossible. So he stayed. He pulled the chair closer to the bed and, without quite meaning to, reached out. His hand hovered over Laura's for a long moment before finally, carefully, settling on top of it. Her skin was cool, too cool, but her pulse was there, faint but steady beneath his fingers. "I'm here," Daniel whispered. "I don't know why I'm here, but I am. So just keep breathing, okay? Keep fighting. I'm here." The ventilator answered. Hiss, click, hiss. Daniel closed his eyes and held on. But morning came slowly, then all at once. Pale gray light crept through the window blinds. The hospital began to wake up around him. Voices in the hallway, the rattle of a medication cart, footsteps. A nurse came in to check Laura's vitals, moving efficiently around the bed, making notes on a tablet. She smiled kindly at Daniel but didn't try to make conversation. He was grateful for that. At 7:30, his phone buzzed. Maya. Daniel stepped into the hallway to answer, his voice rough from disuse. "Hey, sweetheart." "Dad, are you okay? You sound weird." He closed his eyes, leaned against the wall. "Maya, I need to tell you something." "What's wrong?" "It's your mom. She was in a car accident last night. She's in the hospital." Silence. Then, small and scared. "How bad?" "Bad. She's stable, but it's bad. I'm coming home." "Maya, you don't have to, I'm already packing. I'll be there in 2 hours." The line went dead. Daniel stood there in the fluorescent hallway, phone still pressed to his ear, and felt the weight of everything settle onto his shoulders. His daughter was coming. His ex-wife was fighting for her life. And he was standing in the wreckage of a past he'd tried so hard to leave behind. He went back into Laura's room. The monitors were still beeping. The ventilator was still breathing for her. Nothing had changed. He sat back down and took her hand again. "Maya's coming," he told her. "She'll be here soon, so you need to hold on, okay? You need to—" His throat closed. He couldn't finish. The door opened and Dr. Patel returned, accompanied by another doctor, this one older with kind eyes. "Mr. Brooks, this is Dr. Chen, our head of trauma surgery. We need to talk about Laura's prognosis." Daniel stood, reluctant to release Laura's hand but needing to hear this on his feet. The next few days will determine a lot, Dr. Chen said. The surgery was successful, but she's not out of danger. We're watching for infection, watching her lung function, monitoring for complications. If she makes it through the next 72 hours without any setbacks, her chances improve significantly. And after that? Daniel asked. When she makes it through? Dr. Chen exchanged a glance with Dr. Patel. Recovery will be long, months probably. She'll need extensive physical therapy, and she's going to need help. Round-the-clock care initially, then gradually decreasing as she regains strength and mobility. She lives alone, Daniel heard himself say. Is there other family, someone who could stay with her? Daniel thought of Laura's parents, both gone for years. Her brother lived in Seattle, had his own family. They'd never been close. No, he said, there's no one. The doctors didn't say anything. They didn't need to. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Daniel looked back at Laura, broken and breathing and alone. I'll figure something out, he said. Maya arrived at 9:47 a.m., her face pale, eyes red-rimmed. She'd been crying on the drive down. Daniel met her in the hallway and she collapsed into his arms, 22 years old and suddenly small again, like she'd been when she was little and had nightmares. I want to see her, she whispered against his shoulder. Okay, but Maya, she looks... I don't care. I need to see her. He led her into the room, watched his daughter's face crumple when she saw her mother. Maya pressed her hands to her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Mom, she breathed. She went to the bedside, took Laura's hand the way Daniel had, held it like something precious and breakable. Daniel stood back, giving them space, his heart breaking for both of them. Why didn't she update her emergency contact? Maya asked after a while, voice thick. Why was it still you? I don't know. Did you two talk recently? No, just at your birthday. You were there. Maya nodded, wiping her eyes. She asked about you sometimes, how you were doing, what you were working on. I thought it was just, I don't know, being polite. Daniel didn't know what to say to that. They stayed like that for a long time, the three of them. Father, daughter, and the woman who connected them. The ventilator kept breathing, the monitors kept beeping. Outside the window, the city woke up fully, people starting their normal days, unaware that in this small room, 3 lives hung suspended in uncertainty. Around noon, Maya fell asleep in the chair, exhausted from the drive and the emotion. Daniel covered her with his jacket and stepped out to get coffee from the cafeteria. The coffee was terrible but hot. He stood in the fluorescent brightness of the cafeteria, surrounded by doctors and nurses and visitors, all of them strangers, all of them living through their own private dramas. He felt untethered, floating. His phone buzzed, a text from his brother. Heard about Laura. You okay? Word traveled fast in small cities. Daniel typed back. Don't know yet. It was the truest thing he'd said all day. When he returned to the ICU, a nurse was adjusting Laura's IV. She looked up when Daniel entered. Any change? He asked. Her vitals are stable. That's good. Dr. Patel will be by in an hour to do another assessment. Daniel nodded, took his seat. Maya was still sleeping, her head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. He should wake her, tell her to go home, get real rest, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. The afternoon passed in a blur of doctor visits and vital checks and waiting. Laura didn't wake. The machines kept their steady rhythm. At some point, Daniel realized he hadn't eaten in nearly 24 hours. He didn't care. Evening fell. The sky outside the window turned orange, then purple, then black. Maya woke up around 7, disoriented and stiff. They ordered food from the cafeteria, sandwiches neither of them really ate, and kept vigil. You should go home, Daniel told her. Get some real sleep. What about you? I'm staying. Dad, Maya, I'm staying. She looked at him for a long moment, something complicated moving across her face. Then she nodded. I'll come back in the morning. Okay. She stood, stretched, then leaned down to kiss her mother's forehead. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Please wake up. Then she hugged Daniel, hard and fierce, and left. The room felt bigger without her, emptier. Daniel settled back into the chair, into the vigil. His back ached, his eyes burned. He didn't move. Somewhere around 10 p.m., the night nurse came in. She was young, with bright pink scrubs and a gentle smile. "You've been here all day," she observed. "Yeah." "You should go home, get some rest." "I'm fine." She didn't argue, just finished her checks and left him alone. Daniel stared at Laura's face, trying to see past the bruises and swelling to the woman underneath. The woman he'd married in a courthouse on a rainy Tuesday because they couldn't wait for a big wedding. The woman who'd held his hand through his father's funeral. Who'd stayed up all night with him when Maya had croup as a baby, who'd made him laugh until he couldn't breathe, who'd loved him until she couldn't anymore. When had it gone wrong? He'd asked himself that question 1,000 times during the divorce and never found a satisfying answer. There'd been no affair, no betrayal, no single breaking point, just a slow erosion of something that had once felt indestructible. Work stress, financial pressure, growing in different directions. A million tiny cuts until one day they'd looked at each other and realized they were strangers sharing a house. The divorce had been a relief, in a way, an ending to something that had already died. So why did sitting here beside her broken body feel like the most natural thing in the world? "I don't hate you," Daniel said quietly into the darkness. "I don't know if you know that. I never hated you. I was angry, yeah, hurt, but I never hated you." The ventilator hissed. "I miss you sometimes. Not us exactly, just you. The way you'd laugh at stupid things. How you could never remember where you put your keys. The way you used to dance in the kitchen when you thought no one was watching." His voice cracked. "I don't know what we're doing here, Laura. I don't know why you never changed that contact. I don't know what happens next. But I'm here. For whatever that's worth, I'm here." He leaned back in the chair, closed his eyes, and let exhaustion finally claim him. The next 3 days were the longest of Daniel's life. He lived in that hospital room, went home only to shower and change clothes, and even then, only when Maya insisted on taking a shift. He slept in the chair beside Laura's bed, woke up with his neck screaming and his back in knots. He drank terrible coffee and ate vending machine food and watched the monitors like they held the secrets of the universe. Laura didn't wake. But she didn't get worse either. Her vitals held steady. The doctor started using words like encouraging and promising. On the third day, they removed the ventilator. Daniel held his breath as they did it, as Laura's body took over the work of breathing on its own. The first few seconds felt eternal. Then her chest rose, fell, rose again. She was breathing. "That's a very good sign," Dr. Patel said, smiling. "She's fighting!" Maya cried with relief. Daniel just nodded, not trusting his voice. That night, alone again in the room, Daniel sat closer to the bed than usual. Laura's face was still bruised, but the swelling had gone down. He could see more of her now, the shape of her nose, the curve of her mouth. "You're doing good," he told her. "Keep going, just keep going." Around 2 a.m., her fingers twitched. Daniel jerked upright, suddenly fully awake. He stared at her hand. Had he imagined it? Then it happened again. A definite movement, small but deliberate. "Laura?" His voice came out strangled. "Laura, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Daniel lunged for the call button, pressed it frantically. "I need a nurse. She's waking up." The room exploded into activity. Nurses appeared, then Dr. Patel, still in street clothes like he'd been called from home. They surrounded the bed, checking responses, shining lights in Laura's eyes, asking her questions. Daniel was pushed to the side, forgotten in the controlled chaos. He stood with his back against the wall, heart hammering, watching. "Laura, can you squeeze my hand?" Dr. Patel asked. A pause. Then, unmistakably, her fingers closed around his. "Good. That's very good. Laura, you're in the hospital. You were in an accident. You're safe. Can you open your eyes for me?" Another pause, longer this time. Then, slowly, her eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, confused. They moved around the room, taking in the ceiling, the machines, the faces of strangers. Then they found Daniel. She stared at him, recognition flickering across her battered face. Her lips moved, trying to form words. No sound came out. Dr. Patel leaned in. Don't try to talk yet. Your throat's going to be sore from the ventilator. Just rest. But Laura's eyes stayed locked on Daniel, and in them he saw something that made his chest tight. Fear. She was terrified. Daniel pushed off the wall, moved back to the bedside before anyone could stop him. He took her hand, the way he'd been doing for 3 days while she was unconscious. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, it's okay. You're okay. I'm here." Her fingers tightened around his, desperately, like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. "I'm here," he repeated. "I'm not going anywhere." The fear in her eyes didn't disappear, but something in her face softened, relaxed, just slightly. "We need to run some tests," Dr. Patel said. "Mr. Brooks, if you could step outside—" "No." Laura's voice was barely a whisper, raw and broken, but unmistakable. "Stay." Everyone in the room turned to look at her. "Stay," she said again, eyes still locked on Daniel. Dr. Patel looked between them, then nodded slowly. "All right, you can stay." Daniel didn't let go of her hand for the next 2 hours as they ran tests, checked her cognitive function, assessed the damage. She answered questions in single words, her voice getting stronger gradually. "Yes. No. Maya. Okay." And through it all, she held on to Daniel like he was an anchor in a storm. Dawn broke over the hospital, soft and gray. The medical team finally cleared out, satisfied with Laura's responses. She was weak, in pain, but awake and aware. Dr. Patel promised to return in a few hours to discuss next steps. Finally, they were alone. Laura looked at Daniel, really looked at him, for the first time since waking. Her eyes were clearer now, more present. "How long?" she whispered. 3 days? 3.5. She closed her eyes, processing. "You stayed?" "Yeah." "Why?" The question hung between them, massive and complicated and impossible to answer simply. "Because they called me," Daniel said. "Because you still had me listed. Because—" He stopped, started over. "Because I couldn't leave." Laura's eyes opened again, searching his face for something. He didn't know what. "I don't remember," she said quietly. "The accident. I don't remember any of it." "Drunk driver. Ran a red light." She nodded carefully, wincing. "Maya?" "She's been here. She'll be back in a few hours. I made her go home and sleep." "You should sleep too. You look awful." Despite everything, Daniel felt his mouth twitch, almost a smile. "Thanks." "Daniel, don't." He cut her off gently. "Don't try to figure this out right now. You just woke up. Just rest. We'll figure everything else out later." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Her eyes were already drifting closed again, exhaustion pulling her under. "Thank you," she whispered. "For staying." "Yeah," Daniel said softly. "Yeah, of course." Her breathing evened out. She was asleep again, but it was different now, natural, healing. Daniel sat back in the chair, his chair now, after 3 days of claiming it, and finally let himself feel the full weight of relief. She was going to be okay, and he had absolutely no idea what came next. The days that followed blurred together in a rhythm of small victories and painful setbacks. Laura woke more frequently, stayed conscious for longer stretches. The doctors downgraded her from critical to serious, then from serious to stable. They removed tubes and wires one by one until she looked less like a patient tethered to machines and more like a woman simply resting in a hospital bed. But progress came with a price. As the medications decreased and her awareness sharpened, the pain intensified. Daniel watched her grit her teeth through physical therapy sessions that left her shaking and breathless. Watched her struggle with simple tasks like sitting up or holding a cup of water. The woman who'd once moved through life with such purpose and energy now needed 15 minutes and 2 nurses just to get to the bathroom. Maya came every day after her classes, sometimes staying late into the evening. She'd bring homework and sit in the corner chair pretending to study while really watching her mother sleep. The fear in her eyes hadn't completely faded. She was quieter than usual, more fragile, like seeing her mother broken had cracked something in her too. Daniel kept showing up. He told himself it was temporary, that once Laura was discharged, someone else would step in, that his responsibility ended at the hospital doors. But he couldn't seem to make himself leave. He rearranged his work schedule, took calls from the hallway, answered emails on his phone while sitting beside her bed. His business partner covered the jobs he couldn't make. His life condensed to the space of that hospital room. On the 5th day, Dr. Patel sat down with them to discuss discharge planning. "You're healing remarkably well," he told Laura, who was sitting up now, propped against pillows, still pale but more present. "Better than we initially hoped, but you're looking at a long recovery. Months of physical therapy, strict limitations on activity, and you absolutely cannot be alone during the first several weeks." Laura's jaw tightened. "I'll manage." "Miss Miles, you can barely walk to the bathroom unassisted right now. You can't drive. You can't lift anything over 5 pounds. You need help with basic daily tasks." "I can hire someone." "Do you have the resources for round-the-clock care? Because that's what you'll need initially." The silence that followed was heavy. Daniel knew Laura's financial situation. The divorce had split their modest savings. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, made decent money but nothing extravagant. Full-time nursing care would bankrupt her in weeks. Maya leaned forward. "She can stay with me." "Sweetheart, you live in a dorm room," Laura said gently. "Then I'll take a semester off. Come home." "Absolutely not." "Mom." "No, Maya, you're not derailing your education for this." "Then what?" Maya's voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "You can't just go home alone and hope for the best." Dr. Patel cleared his throat. "Perhaps there's another family member, a friend." Laura shook her head. "There's no one." The words landed like stones. Daniel felt everyone in the room carefully not looking at him. He stared at his hands, at the calluses on his palms from years of construction work, at the scar on his left thumb from a table saw accident when he was 23. He thought about his house, the 3 bedrooms upstairs, the guest room that had become a storage space for boxes he'd never unpacked and furniture he didn't need. "She can stay with me." The words came out before he'd fully formed the thought. Everyone turned to stare. "What?" Laura said. Daniel looked up, met her eyes. "You can stay with me. The guest room is available. It's on the ground floor, no stairs, close to the bathroom. You'd have privacy but help when you need it." "Daniel, you can't." "I can. I'm offering." "Why would you do that?" It was the same question she'd asked when she first woke up. "Why are you here? Why did you stay?" And Daniel still didn't have a simple answer. "Because you need help," he said finally. "And I can help. So I will." Laura stared at him like he'd suggested something insane. Maybe he had. Maybe this was the stupidest idea he'd ever had. But even as the thought formed, he knew he meant it, knew he wasn't going to take it back. "Think about it," Dr. Patel said diplomatically. "You don't need to decide right now, but we're looking at discharge in 3 to 5 days, so sooner rather than later." He left them alone. Maya looked between her parents, something hopeful and scared flickering across her face. "Dad's right," she said quietly. "It makes sense." "Maya." "It does, Mom. You need help. Dad has space, and I can check in regularly since I'm only 2 hours away." She paused. "Unless you don't want to." "Unless it would be too weird." Too weird, that was one way to put it. Moving in with your ex-husband 3 years after divorce. Living under the same roof with someone you'd promised to love forever and then systematically untangled your life from. Sharing space with all that history, all that failure. "I need to think about it," Laura said. "Okay," Daniel replied. "Take your time." But they both knew there weren't many other options. That night, after Maya left and Laura drifted into an uneasy sleep, Daniel sat in the hallway outside her room and called his brother. "You're doing what?" Marcus said when Daniel explained. "Letting her stay in the guest room while she recovers." "Are you out of your mind?" "Probably." "Daniel, this is your ex-wife, the woman you spent 18 months divorcing, the woman who, I know who she is." "Do you?" "Because it sounds like you've forgotten all the reasons you're not together anymore." Daniel leaned his head back against the wall, closed his eyes. "She has no one else, Marcus. That's not your problem." Maybe it should be. His brother sighed, long and heavy. What does Maya think? She thinks it's a good idea. Of course she does. She's 22 and still hoping you'll get back together. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Daniel didn't answer. Couldn't. Be careful, Marcus said finally. I know you. You're going to take care of her because that's what you do. But don't forget she's the one who left. The words stung because they were true. Technically, they'd decided together. Mutually agreed the marriage was over. But Laura had been the first one to say it out loud. The first one to suggest separation. The first one to move out. I'll be careful, Daniel said. He hung up and sat there in the sterile hallway, wondering what the hell he was doing. The next morning, Laura brought it up before he could. The guest room, she said when he arrived with coffee. Is the offer still open? Yes. She nodded slowly, worrying her bottom lip. It would just be temporary, until I can manage on my own. I know. And we'd need ground rules, boundaries. Whatever you want. I'd pay rent, contribute to groceries. Laura, I'm serious, Daniel. I'm not a charity case. He set the coffee down on her bedside table, pulled up the chair. I know you're not, but you're also recovering from major trauma. Let's just get you healthy first, then we can worry about logistics. She studied him with those sharp eyes that had always seen through his defenses. Why are you doing this? I already told you. No, really? Why? Daniel took a breath. Let it out slow. Because when they called me at 3 a.m, I realized something. We might not be married anymore, but that doesn't mean I stopped caring whether you're okay. And right now, you're not okay. So I'm doing what needs to be done. Even though I'm the one who ended it. There it was. The thing neither of them had said out loud in 3 years. Yeah, Daniel said quietly. Even though. Laura's eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears back. Okay, I'll stay, but the second I can manage alone. You're out. I got it. She nodded, then looked away, suddenly interested in the pattern on the hospital blanket. Thank you. I mean it. Thank you. Yeah, Daniel said. Don't mention it. The discharge process took another 4 days. Physical therapists came to assess Laura's mobility and teach her exercises. Occupational therapists evaluated what equipment she'd need. A home health nurse would visit 3 times a week for the first month. They sent Daniel home with pages of instructions, medication schedules, warning signs to watch for. He spent those days preparing the house. Cleared out the guest room completely, moved his boxes to the garage, set up the bed with new sheets, added a nightstand and lamp, put a chair by the window, installed grab bars in the downstairs bathroom. Stocked the medicine cabinet. He moved through the tasks mechanically, not letting himself think too hard about what it meant. Maya helped. She showed up with groceries and cleaning supplies, scrubbed the kitchen until it gleamed, filled the pantry with easy meals and snacks. Are you nervous? She asked while organizing the refrigerator. Should I be? I don't know. It's kind of a big deal. Mom living here again. She's not living here. She's recovering here. There's a difference. Maya shot him a look. If you say so. I do. Okay. She closed the refrigerator, turned to face him. Can I ask you something? Always. Do you still love her? The question hit him sideways. Daniel froze, dish towel in hand, trying to find an answer that was both honest and safe. It's complicated, he said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Maya nodded slowly. Just be careful, Dad. Both of you. This could get messy. I know. But I'm glad you're doing it anyway. She hugged him then, fierce and quick, and Daniel held on maybe a beat longer than necessary. The day of discharge arrived gray and cold, early November wind carrying the threat of winter. Daniel pulled up to the hospital entrance where a nurse waited with Laura in a wheelchair. She looked smaller somehow, dressed in the clothes Maya had brought from her apartment, dark circles under her eyes despite the makeup she'd carefully applied. She hated the wheelchair. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the tension in her shoulders. Ready? Daniel asked. As I'll ever be. The nurse helped her into the passenger seat while Daniel collapsed the wheelchair and stored it in the truck bed. The hospital had insisted he take it, at least temporarily. Laura didn't argue, but he knew it grated on her. Independence had always been important to her. Being dependent now, especially on him, must feel like torture. They drove in silence through streets lined with bare trees and houses already decorated for the holidays. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. Christmas lights were going up. The world kept turning, oblivious to the strange detour their lives had taken. "You redid the landscaping," Laura said as they pulled into his driveway. "Last spring, the old bushes were dying." She nodded, taking in the house that had been theirs once. He'd painted it 2 years ago, changed the shutters from blue to gray. Small changes, but enough to mark it as his now, not theirs. Getting her inside took longer than it should have. Every movement hurt. She moved like someone much older, careful and slow, one hand pressed to her ribs. Daniel hovered, unsure how much help to offer, afraid of overstepping or underlining her vulnerability. Finally, they made it through the door. Laura stood in the entryway, breathing hard from the exertion, looking around at the familiar and unfamiliar all mixed together. Same hardwood floors, different furniture, same layout, different life. "Guest rooms this way," Daniel said. He led her down the hall past the living room, the kitchen, to the small bedroom at the back of the house. She stopped in the doorway, taking it in. The clean white walls, the simple bed with its navy comforter, the window overlooking the backyard where the oak tree they'd planted together still stood, bigger now, branches nearly reaching the house. "It's nice," she said quietly. "Really nice. Thank you." "Bathroom's right across the hall. I put some of your toiletries in there. Maya brought them from your place." Laura nodded, moved carefully into the room, lowered herself onto the bed with a sharp intake of breath. "I think I need to lie down for a while." "Of course. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. Just call." He started to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Daniel?" "Yeah? I mean it. Thank you for all of this." "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I do. Because this is..." She gestured vaguely at the room, at him, at everything. "This is beyond what anyone would expect." "Maybe I'm not anyone." The words came out softer than he intended, more revealing. Their eyes met and held for a moment too long before Daniel cleared his throat and backed out of the room. "Rest," he said. "I'll check on you in a bit." He closed the door and stood in the hallway, heart beating harder than it should, wondering what he'd just gotten himself into. The first few days established a routine that felt both strange and somehow natural. Daniel woke early, made coffee, left a cup outside Laura's door before heading to work. He'd come back at lunch to check on her, make sure she'd eaten, help if she needed to shower or change. Evenings, they orbited each other carefully, she in the living room with a book or laptop, he in the kitchen making dinner. They ate together at the table, making small talk that avoided anything deeper than the weather or Maya's latest call. The home health nurse came on Wednesday and Friday, a physical therapist on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Laura pushed herself hard during those sessions, harder than she probably should, determined to prove she was healing faster than expected. Daniel could see the pain she was hiding, the way she'd go straight to her room afterward and not emerge for hours. He wanted to tell her to slow down, wanted to remind her that healing took time, that there was no prize for rushing it. But he bit his tongue. She wouldn't listen anyway. She'd never been good at accepting limitations. Maya visited that first weekend, bringing Thai food and a cheerfulness that felt slightly forced. She chattered about her classes, her boyfriend Connor, who sent his regards, a party she'd gone to where the theme was badly translated movie titles. She was trying too hard. They were all trying too hard. After dinner, Laura excused herself to rest, and Maya helped Daniel clean up. "How's it going?" she asked while drying plates. "Fine. Good." "Dad?" "What? Is it weird?" Daniel considered lying, then decided against it. "Yeah, it's weird. But manageable weird? So far." Maya nodded, set down a plate. "She seems better, stronger. She's pushing herself too hard." "That's just Mom." "I know." They finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Before she left, Maya hugged him at the door. "You're doing a good thing," she said, "even if it's weird." Daniel watched her drive away, then went back inside to a house that felt too quiet and too full at the same time. That night, around midnight, he woke to the sound of movement in the hallway. He grabbed his robe and found Laura in the kitchen, struggling to reach a glass from the upper cabinet. "Let me," Daniel said, making her jump. "I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I'm a light sleeper." He got the glass down, filled it with water, handed it to her. "Couldn't sleep?" "Pain's worse at night." "Did you take your medication?" "I don't like how it makes me feel. Foggy." "Laura, I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. He could see it in the tightness around her mouth, the careful way she held herself. Without thinking, he pulled out a chair. "Sit." "Daniel, just sit, please." She lowered herself into the chair with visible relief. Daniel filled a glass of water for himself and sat across from her, the kitchen table between them like neutral territory. "You can't tough your way through this," he said. "Watch me." "I'm serious. The doctors gave you those medications for a reason, and I'll take them when I need them. You need them now." She glared at him, but there was no real heat in it, just exhaustion. "Since when do you care about my medication schedule?" "Since you moved into my house recovering from major trauma." "Your house, right." She took a sip of water. "I keep forgetting." The words hung there, loaded with meaning neither of them wanted to unpack. "How long were you planning to tough it out before asking for help?" Daniel asked. "I wasn't planning to ask for help." "Of course not." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've always been terrible at asking for help. Even when we were married, you'd rather break your back trying to do everything yourself than admit you needed support." Laura's eyes flashed. "That's not fair." "It's true. You weren't exactly Mr. Open Communication yourself." "I know. I'm not saying I was. I'm saying we both had our problems." The admission seemed to deflate her anger. She sagged back in the chair, suddenly looking as tired as she probably felt. "I don't want to fight," she said quietly. "Neither do I." They sat in silence for a while, just the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the kitchen clock. Daniel studied her across the table, the way her hair fell across her shoulder, still damp from washing. The fading bruises on her face now yellow and green, the small scar on her chin from a childhood bike accident. He knew that scar, knew all her scars, visible and otherwise. "I'm sorry," Laura said finally. "You're right. I should take the medication." "I'll get it." He retrieved the pill bottle from her room, brought it back with more water, watched her swallow the pills and make a face. "Happy?" she asked. "Thrilled." A ghost of a smile crossed her face. "You're a pain in the ass, you know that? Takes one to know one." The smile lingered for a moment, then faded. "I really am trying not to be a burden." "You're not a burden. I'm living in your guest room because I can't take care of myself. That's pretty much the definition." "That's the definition of recovering. There's a difference." She shook her head. "You're too nice. You always were." "Is that why you left?" The question came out before Daniel could stop it. Too direct, too raw. But it was out now, hanging in the kitchen air between them at midnight. Laura went very still. "That's not... It wasn't about you being nice. Then what was it about?" "Daniel, don't. I'm serious. We never really talked about it. Not really. We just agreed to disagree and signed papers and moved on. Because there was nothing to talk about." "Bullshit." She flinched at the word. Daniel never cursed at her, never had, even in their worst fights. "You want to do this now?" Laura asked. "Really?" "Why not? We're both awake. We're both here." "I'm medicated." "All the better. Maybe you'll actually tell me the truth." Laura stared at him for a long moment, something complicated working across her face. Then, slowly, she spoke. "I left because I felt like I was disappearing. Like every day I was becoming smaller, quieter, less myself. And I didn't know how to fix it without burning everything down." The honesty of it hit Daniel in the chest. "You never said that. You never told me you felt that way. How could I? You were working all the time, stressed about money, about the business. I couldn't add my existential crisis to your plate." "So you just decided for both of us that we were done?" "No. I decided for me that I needed space to figure out who I was outside of being your wife and Maya's mother. And when I finally said it out loud, you agreed. Because you seemed so sure. Because I thought if I really loved you, I should let you go. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Don't do that. Don't make it romantic. I'm not. I'm telling you what I felt. Well, it didn't feel romantic from my side. It felt like relief mixed with guilt, mixed with grief. It felt like failing at the one thing I was supposed to get right. You didn't fail. We didn't fail. Then why does it still hurt? The question broke something open between them. 3 years of careful politeness, of avoiding anything real, crumbled. They sat across from each other in Daniel's kitchen at midnight and finally said true things. I don't know, Daniel admitted. I think maybe because we never got closure. We just ended. Maybe some things don't get closure. Maybe they just end and you learn to live with it. Is that what you've been doing? Learning to live with it? Laura wiped her eyes, smudging mascara she'd forgotten to remove. I've been trying. Some days are better than others. Yeah, Daniel said softly. Yeah, same. They sat in the quiet for another long moment. Then Laura yawned, the medication finally pulling her under. I should sleep, she said. Yeah, you should. He helped her back to her room, steadied her when she stumbled slightly in the hallway. At her door she paused, looked up at him. Thank you. For tonight. For being honest. You too. It doesn't change anything. I know. But even as he said it, Daniel wondered if that was true. If honesty ever really left things unchanged. He went back to bed but didn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about disappearing women and men who worked too much and a marriage that ended not with a bang, but a whisper. After that midnight conversation, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, not obviously, but enough that Daniel noticed. Laura started accepting help more readily, started asking for things instead of trying to manage alone, started staying in the kitchen while he cooked dinner instead of retreating to her room. They talked more, about safer things at first. Maya's upcoming exams, the leak in the bathroom faucet Daniel kept meaning to fix, a documentary Laura had watched about ocean conservation, surface conversations that slowly deepened, layer by layer, like thawing ice. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear, the kind of November day that promised winter was coming, but hadn't quite committed yet. Maya came home the night before, arms full of grocery bags and a determination to cook a proper holiday meal despite her mother's protests. You're supposed to be resting, Laura said from her spot on the living room couch where she'd been reading. I am resting. Resting from studying by cooking. It's therapeutic. Maya dumped the bags on the kitchen counter and started unpacking. Besides, when was the last time we all had Thanksgiving together? 3 years? 4? The question landed heavily. Daniel caught Laura's eye across the room. The last Thanksgiving they'd spent as a family had been tense and false, both of them pretending everything was fine while their marriage crumbled underneath. Maya had been home from college, oblivious or maybe just hopeful, chattering about her classes while her parents smiled and passed dishes and counted the hours until it was over. This will be different, Maya continued, either missing the tension or choosing to ignore it. Better. More authentic. No pressure then, Daniel muttered, earning a sharp look from his daughter. I just mean we don't have to pretend anymore. We can just be us, whatever that looks like now. She was right, of course, but Daniel wasn't sure any of them knew what that looked like yet. Maya took over the kitchen with the focused intensity she brought to everything, turning down offers of help from both parents. Laura eventually gave up and returned to her book. Daniel escaped to the garage under the pretense of organizing tools, but really just needed space to think. The house felt different with all 3 of them in it. Fuller, more complicated, like trying to solve an equation where none of the variables stayed constant. He was still in the garage when Laura appeared in the doorway, moving more easily now than she had 2 weeks ago. The physical therapy was working. She could walk without grimacing, could lift her arms above her head, could make it through most days without needing an afternoon nap. Can we talk? She asked. Daniel set down the wrench he'd been holding. Sure. She came in, closed the door behind her, and leaned against his workbench. I've been thinking about what happens next. His stomach tightened. Okay. The nurse thinks I can probably manage on my own in another week or 2. I'm getting stronger every day. And my apartment's just sitting empty, so it makes sense to... You don't have to go. The words came out too fast, too intense. Laura stopped mid-sentence, staring at him. What? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, choosing his next words carefully. I mean, you can stay as long as you need. There's no rush. Daniel, I've been here almost a month. I know. That's longer than we agreed. We didn't agree to a timeline. We just said temporary. Exactly, temporary, which means it has to end sometime. Why? Laura laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because I can't live in your guest room forever? Because we're divorced? Because this whole situation is completely insane? Is it working? What? This arrangement, is it working? Are you comfortable? Do you feel like you're healing okay? Yes, but then why change it? Laura pushed off the workbench, agitated now. Because it's not real, Daniel. This isn't our life. You're playing caretaker and I'm playing invalid and Maya's playing happy family, but none of it means anything. It's just temporary. A pause. And pauses have to end. What if I don't want it to end? The confession hung in the dusty air of the garage. Laura froze, eyes wide. Don't, she said quietly. Don't what? Don't do this. Don't make it complicated. It's already complicated. It doesn't have to be. We can go back to how things were before. Separate lives, polite distance. Is that what you want? It's what makes sense. That's not what I asked. Laura closed her eyes, her face a mask of conflict. When she opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. What I want doesn't matter. We tried this already, remember? We had 15 years together, and it didn't work. We were different people then. We're the same people, just older and more damaged. I don't believe that. Well, I do. Her voice cracked. I have to. Because if I let myself think that we could try again, that this could be something real, and then it falls apart, I can't do that, Daniel. I can't survive failing at us twice. The raw honesty of it broke his heart. Daniel wanted to cross the space between them, wanted to pull her close and promise it would be different this time, but he couldn't make that promise, couldn't guarantee anything except that he was willing to try. I'm not asking you to decide anything right now, he said instead. I'm just saying you don't have to leave, not yet, not until you're really ready. Laura wiped her eyes angrily. You're making this so hard. I know, I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're right, I'm not. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Then Maya's voice drifted from the house, calling them for dinner preparation duties, and the moment shattered. Laura straightened, composing herself with visible effort. We should go in, she said. Yeah. They walked back to the house together, careful not to touch, the conversation unfinished and unresolved. Maya took one look at their faces and wisely said nothing, just handed them each a task and turned up the music. They cooked together in careful choreography, moving around each other in the kitchen that had once been theirs, now his, now somehow shared again. Daniel peeled potatoes while Laura prepared the green beans, moving slower than she used to but managing. Maya commanded the turkey with militant precision, basting and checking temperature and declaring it would be perfect. This is nice, she said at one point, looking between her parents with something hopeful and fragile in her expression. Being together like this. Yeah, Laura said softly. It is. Daniel caught her eye across the counter and saw his own confusion reflected back. Because it was nice. Terrifyingly nice. The kind of nice that made you forget why you'd ever left in the first place. Dinner was chaotic and warm. The three of them crowded around the table that had once hosted family dinners every night and now felt both familiar and strange. Maya insisted on going around the table sharing what they were grateful for, a tradition Laura had started when Maya was little. I'm grateful Mom's alive, Maya said simply, and that you're both here, together. The weight of that last word settled over the table. Laura shifted uncomfortably. I'm grateful for physical therapists, she offered, and nurses, and modern medicine. And Dad, Maya prompted. And your father, Laura agreed, not meeting Daniel's eyes, for everything he's done. They both looked at him expectantly. Daniel set down his fork, thinking. I'm grateful for second chances, he said finally, even the ones that scare the hell out of me. The meal continued, but the mood had shifted, become quieter, more introspective. After dinner, Maya insisted on handling cleanup alone, shooing her parents into the living room. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a careful distance between them, watching the fire Daniel had built earlier. "She's not subtle," Laura said. "Never has been. She wants us to get back together. I know. We can't do that to her, get her hopes up just to disappoint her again." "Is that what we'd be doing?" Laura turned to look at him fully. "I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know anything anymore." Before Daniel could respond, his phone rang. He checked the caller ID and frowned. "It's Marcus. I should take this." He stepped into the kitchen where Maya was elbow deep in soapy water. "Happy Thanksgiving," his brother said when Daniel answered. "How's the strangest domestic situation in America going?" "It's fine." "Just fine? You're playing house with your ex-wife, and it's just fine?" "What do you want, Marcus?" His brother sighed. "I'm worried about you. This whole thing, it's a lot. And I know you, Danny. You're going to put everything into taking care of her, and then she's going to leave and you're going to be devastated all over again. You don't know that." "Don't I? She left once already." "We both left. It was mutual." "Was it, though?" Daniel pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a headache building. "I can't do this right now. I'm just saying, be careful. Protect yourself. Don't confuse gratitude with love." "I'm not confused." "Good. Keep it that way." Marcus paused. "But if you are going to do something stupid, like fall for her again, at least make sure it's real this time. Make sure you're both all in." After they hung up, Daniel stood in the kitchen watching Maya work, thinking about his brother's words. Make sure it's real. But how did you know? How did you distinguish between genuine connection and the comfortable familiarity of history, between love and nostalgia? "You okay, Dad?" Maya asked, noticing his expression. "Yeah, just thinking." "About Mom?" "Is it that obvious?" Maya smiled. "Only to people who know you." She rinsed a plate, set it in the rack. "Can I say something without you getting defensive?" "Probably not, but try anyway. I think you two are dancing around something, and I get it. You're scared. You both are. But maybe scared is okay. Maybe it means it matters. When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." She dried her hands, turned to face him. "I'm not saying rush into anything. I'm just saying don't run away from it either. You both did that already. Maybe try something different this time." Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, grateful and overwhelmed. "How did I get so lucky with you?" "Good genes and Mom's parenting. Let's be honest, she did most of the heavy lifting." They finished the dishes together, then joined Laura in the living room. She'd moved to the armchair, curled up under a blanket, eyes heavy with exhaustion. The day had taken its toll. "I should head to bed," she said, but made no move to get up. "Stay a minute," Maya said. "Let's just sit together." So they did. The three of them in the quiet living room, fire crackling, the remains of Thanksgiving surrounding them. Maya put on a movie none of them really watched, content just to be in the same space. Laura fell asleep first, her breathing evening out. Maya followed not long after, her head tilted against the chair back. Daniel stayed awake, watching them both. His daughter and his ex-wife, the two people who'd shaped his life more than anyone else. He thought about what Maya had said, about being scared, about trying something different. The fire burned down to embers. The movie ended. Daniel carefully woke Maya, sent her upstairs to the guest bedroom she was using for the weekend. Then he approached Laura, touched her shoulder gently. "Laura, wake up." She stirred, disoriented. "What time is it?" "Late. Come on, let's get you to bed." He helped her up, steadied her when she swayed slightly. They made it down the hall to her room, moving through the dark house like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Because they had, once, in a different house, a different life. At her door, Laura paused. "Thank you for today, for all of this. You keep thanking me, because I keep meaning it." She looked up at him, and in the dim hallway light, Daniel could see everything. The exhaustion, the confusion, the fear, the hope. All of it right there on her face, unguarded for once. "I'm scared too," he said quietly, "if that helps." "It doesn't, but thank you for saying it." She went inside, closed the door softly. Daniel stood there for a moment longer, then returned to the living room to bank the fire and turn off the lights. The house settled into nighttime silence around him, full of sleeping people and unspoken possibilities. The next morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. Maya left after breakfast, heading back to school with containers of leftovers and hugs that lasted a beat too long. After she drove away, the house felt cavernous and too quiet. Daniel found Laura in the kitchen, staring at the dishes from breakfast. "I'll get those," he said. "I can help." "You're not supposed to eat." "Daniel, I can wash dishes. I'm not that fragile anymore." So they washed dishes together, side by side at the sink, falling into an easy rhythm. Laura washed, Daniel dried, like they'd done for years of married life, dividing the labor without discussion. "Maya thinks we're dancing," Laura said abruptly. "What?" "Around each other, around feelings. She said we're dancing." Daniel set down a plate. "What do you think?" "I think she might be right." Laura handed him another dish, not looking at him. "I also think I'm terrified of what happens if we stop. We could just stand still, see what that feels like. And if it feels wrong, then we know." Laura finally looked at him, really looked at him. "And if it feels right, then we figure out what comes next." She nodded slowly, turning back to the dishes. They finished in silence, both aware of something hovering just out of reach, both too scared to grab for it. The days that followed were different, smaller. Just the two of them in the house, establishing new patterns. Laura's physical therapy appointments decreased to twice a week. She started taking short walks around the neighborhood, building strength and stamina. Started cooking dinner some nights, insisting she needed to contribute. They ate together every evening now, talking about everything and nothing. Old memories surfaced, got examined, sometimes laughed about. The story of their first date disaster. The time they got lost in the mountains and ended up spending the night in the car. The 1,000 small moments that made up a shared life. But they also talked about harder things. The fights they'd avoided. The resentments they'd swallowed. The slow drift apart that neither had known how to stop. It was painful, excavating all that buried history, but also necessary, like cleaning an old wound so it could finally heal properly. One evening, about a week after Thanksgiving, Daniel came home from work to find Laura in the backyard. She stood under the oak tree they'd planted 15 years ago, hands in her pockets, face tipped up to the branches. "Remember when this thing was barely taller than Maya?" she said when he joined her. "Couldn't imagine it would ever be this big. We were so young, thought we had forever figured out." "We were idiots," Laura laughed. "Laura, complete idiots." They stood there in the fading light, watching the bare branches sway in the wind. Winter was almost here. The tree would sleep soon, store its energy, wait for spring. "I need to tell you something," Laura said, "and I need you to just listen. Don't interrupt, don't fix it. Just listen." "Okay?" She took a deep breath. "When I left, I thought I was doing the right thing, for both of us. I thought we'd become these people who just existed side by side, but didn't really see each other anymore. And I was so tired of feeling invisible. But here's the thing I didn't realize until now. I was part of the problem. I didn't tell you I was disappearing. I just expected you to notice, to read my mind, and when you didn't, I resented you for it, which wasn't fair." Daniel wanted to speak, but remembered his promise to just listen. "Being here these past few weeks, I've seen you more clearly than I have in years. Maybe more clearly than I ever did when we were married, and I like what I see. I like this version of us that talks honestly and doesn't hide behind politeness. I like that we can fight about medication schedules and laugh about old disasters and sit in comfortable silence." She paused. "But I'm also terrified that this is just a bubble, that it only works because I'm healing and you're helping and there's a built-in expiration date. I'm scared that if we tried to make it real, permanent, we'd fall right back into old patterns." "Can I talk now?" Daniel asked. "Not yet." Laura turned to face him fully. "I think I'm falling for you again. Or maybe I never stopped and I'm just admitting it. And that terrifies me more than the accident did, more than anything. Because if I let myself love you and we fail again, I don't think I'd survive it." Tears were streaming down her face now. Daniel's chest ached. "Okay," she said, voice shaking. "Now you can talk." Daniel stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes, close enough to count the freckles across her nose that darkened every summer. "I don't have any guarantees," he said. "I can't promise we won't mess this up. Can't promise it'll be easy or perfect or even work at all. But I can promise I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I've learned things about myself, about what matters, about what I should have said and didn't." He reached up, wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I can promise that if you give me another chance, I'll show up every day and try my damnedest to get it right. I'll tell you when I'm overwhelmed instead of shutting down. I'll notice when you're struggling instead of assuming you're fine. I'll be present instead of checked out. What if it's not enough? Then at least we'll know we tried, really tried, with all our cards on the table." Laura let out a shaky breath. "This is insane." "Probably. We're going to get hurt." "Maybe." "Maya's going to have opinions." "Definitely." She laughed through her tears. "I can't believe I'm considering this." "Considering what exactly?" Laura stepped closer, closing the last bit of distance between them. "Considering that maybe the call that woke you up at 3 a.m. wasn't just about an accident. Maybe it was about a second chance for both of us." "And are you considering it?" Instead of answering, she reached up and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like testing old waters to see if they still ran deep. But then Daniel's arms came around her and Laura pressed closer, and suddenly it wasn't tentative at all. It was desperate and certain, and 3 years of grief and longing compressed into a single moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Laura rested her forehead against his. "I'm still scared," she whispered. "Me too. But I want to try." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They stood there under the oak tree as darkness fell, holding each other like anchors in a storm, like people who'd been lost and found their way back, like two idiots crazy enough to believe in second chances. Inside the house, Daniel's phone rang with a call from Maya. They ignored it, content to stay in the backyard a little longer. The tree swayed above them. The first stars appeared, and somewhere in the quiet of that November evening, something old ended and something new began. They eventually went inside when the cold became too much to ignore, fingers intertwined, neither willing to let go first. The kitchen light felt too bright after the darkness of the backyard, too exposing. Laura pulled her hand away to fill the kettle, suddenly focused on the mundane task of making tea like she needed the normalcy of it. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching her move through his kitchen with the muscle memory of someone who'd done it 1,000 times before. She knew where the mugs were kept, which drawer held the spoons, how he liked his tea strong enough to stand a spoon in. 3 years apart hadn't erased any of it. "We should probably talk about what just happened," Laura said, her back still to him. "Do we have to? Right now?" She turned, eyebrow raised. "You want to just pretend we didn't kiss for the first time in 3 years under our tree?" "Our tree?" "You know what I mean." Daniel did know. The possessive had slipped out naturally, revealing something neither of them had quite acknowledged yet. The kettle whistled and Laura poured water over tea bags, the familiar ritual buying them both time. "Maya called," Daniel said, checking his phone. 3 times. She has a sixth sense for these things. Should I call her back? And tell her what exactly? That her parents kissed in the backyard like teenagers? She'd be thrilled. She'd have us married again by Christmas. Laura handed him a mug, their fingers brushing. "Let's just take this slow. Figure out what we're doing before we announce anything." "Is that what you want?" "I want to not mess this up before it even starts." She blew on her tea, eyes serious over the rim of the mug. "I meant what I said out there. I'm terrified of failing at this twice." Daniel set his mug down, reached across the counter to take her free hand. "Then we don't fail. We communicate. We're honest. We do all the things we didn't do before." "Can't be that simple." "Why not?" "Because nothing's ever that simple with us." She had a point. Their history was complicated, layered with old hurts and unresolved conflicts. But Daniel was tired of complicated, tired of overthinking everything to death. "Let's make a rule," he said, "right now. If something's bothering us, we say it. No swallowing it down, no assuming the other person knows. We just say it." Laura considered this. "Even if it's hard?" especially if it's hard. Okay, she squeezed his hand. Then I'll start. I'm scared that you're only doing this because I'm here and vulnerable and you feel responsible for me. I'm scared this is just proximity and old habit dressed up as feelings. The honesty stung, but Daniel appreciated it. Fair. But you're wrong. I'm doing this because for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can breathe properly again. Because watching you fight to get better reminded me of all the reasons I fell in love with you in the first place. Because being around you feels like coming home. Laura's eyes glistened. That's not fair. What? Saying things like that, making it impossible for me to keep my walls up. Good. I don't want your walls up. They drank their tea in charged silence, the kitchen suddenly feeling smaller, more intimate. Daniel could hear the clock ticking, the hum of the refrigerator, his own heartbeat. I should probably go to bed, Laura said, but didn't move. Probably. This is going to be weird, isn't it? Living together while trying to figure out if we're together. Definitely. Any thoughts on how to navigate that? Daniel thought about it. We could set some boundaries, make sure we're both comfortable. Like what? I don't know. You tell me what you need. Laura set down her mug, crossed her arms. I need to know this isn't just physical. That we're not jumping into bed together because it's familiar and easy. Agreed. We take the physical stuff slow. How slow? As slow as you need. She nodded, some tension leaving her shoulders. And I need my own space still. The guest room stays mine for now. Of course. And we need to tell Maya, soon before she figures it out on her own and feels left out. This weekend? This weekend, Laura agreed. She picked up their mugs, rinsed them in the sink. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for being honest. She turned, studied his face. We're really doing this. Looks like it. We're insane. Probably. Daniel moved closer, couldn't help himself. But maybe the good kind of insane. Laura laughed, and the sound of it filled something hollow in Daniel's chest. There's a good kind? Sure. The kind that makes you try even when it's scary. The kind that makes you believe in second chances. When did you become such an optimist? When I almost lost you. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Laura's smile faded into something more serious, more real. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, she said quietly. I'm going to get scared and want to run. I'm going to fall back into old patterns without meaning to. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? That I won't mess up too? We both know I will. I'll work too much or shut down when I'm stressed or forget to tell you something important, but we'll catch it this time. We'll call each other out. We'll fix it before it becomes unfixable. Laura reached up, touched his face with a gentleness that made his breath catch. I really want to believe that. Then believe it. She kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter. A promise instead of a question. When she pulled back, she was smiling. Good night, Daniel. Good night, Laura. He watched her walk down the hall to her room, waited until he heard the door close before letting out the breath he'd been holding. His phone buzzed again. Maya. He typed back, Everything's fine. Call you tomorrow. Her response was immediate. Fine, fine, or something happened fine. Daniel smiled despite himself. Talk tomorrow. Love you. Love you too, but you're being suspicious. He pocketed the phone and headed upstairs to his own room, to his empty bed that suddenly felt too big. Sleep took a long time to come, his mind replaying the evening on an endless loop. The kiss, the conversation, the terrifying hope blooming in his chest. The next morning, Daniel woke to the smell of coffee and something baking. He came downstairs to find Laura in the kitchen, flour on her cheek, pulling a tray of muffins from the oven. You're baking, he said stupidly. Very observant. She set the tray down, wiped her hands on a towel. I couldn't sleep. Baking helps. Nervous? Terrified. She smiled to soften it. But the good kind, I think. They ate breakfast together, the conversation easier than Daniel expected. Laura told him about a client who wanted her to redesign their entire website on an impossible deadline. Daniel shared a story about his business partner's latest terrible idea for expanding the company. Normal things. everyday things, the kind of mundane sharing that built a life together. After breakfast, Laura retreated to her room to work on her laptop while Daniel tackled some paperwork for the business. They moved around each other throughout the day, intersecting for coffee refills and sandwich making and quick conversations. It felt natural. Right. Like they were finding a rhythm that worked. That evening, they called Maya together, putting the phone on speaker between them at the kitchen table. Finally, Maya said when she answered, "I've been dying here. What happened? Wait, are you both there? Why are you both on the phone?" Laura and Daniel exchanged glances. He nodded for her to take the lead. "We need to tell you something," Laura started. "Oh my God, are you dying? Is it back? Did the doctors miss something?" "No, sweetheart, nothing like that. I'm fine. We're both fine." "Then what?" Daniel jumped in. "Your mom and we're trying something, seeing if maybe we can make this work, together." Silence, long enough that Daniel checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. "Maya? I'm here. I'm processing." Another pause. "Wait, are you saying you're getting back together?" "We're saying we're trying," Laura clarified, taking it slow, seeing where it goes. "Holy shit. Language," both parents said simultaneously, then looked at each other and laughed. "Sorry, but holy crap. When did this happen? How did this happen? I was just there, and you were both being all careful and distant, and now you're together." "It's complicated," Daniel said. "It's always complicated with you two." "Oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm freaking out. In a good way. Mostly good. Are you sure about this? Like really sure? Because I love you both, but I can't watch you destroy each other again." The joy in Maya's voice had dampened into something more cautious, more protective. Laura's expression softened. "We know, baby. We're being careful. We're going into this with our eyes open." "But you're going into it?" "We're trying to," Laura confirmed. "No promises on how it'll turn out, but we're trying." Okay. Maya took an audible breath. "Then I'm happy for you. Cautiously, protectively happy. But happy." They talked for another 20 minutes, Maya peppering them with questions they mostly couldn't answer. What did this mean? Were they dating? Were they back together officially? When would they know if it was working? "We don't have all the answers yet," Daniel said finally. "We're figuring it out as we go." "That's terrifying." "Tell me about it," Laura muttered. After they hung up, the house felt quiet again. Laura stood at the sink, staring out the window at the darkening backyard. "She's worried," she said. "She'll be okay. She just needs time to adjust." "What if we're making a mistake? What if this blows up and we put her through that pain again?" Daniel came up behind her, rested his hands on her shoulders. "Then we'll deal with it, together. But I don't think we're making a mistake." "How can you be so sure?" "Because this time we're not pretending everything's fine when it's not. We're not avoiding hard conversations. We're actually trying." Laura turned in his arms, looked up at him. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. If this starts to go wrong, if we start falling into old patterns, we talk about it. We don't let it fester. And if we can't fix it, we end it cleanly. No dragging it out. No making each other miserable." The request hurt, but Daniel understood it. "I promise." "Thank you." She rested her head against his chest and they stood there, swaying slightly, no music but their own breathing. Daniel thought about all the times they'd stood like this in their old kitchen, stealing moments between responsibilities. How had they let those moments stop? When had they become strangers who shared a house instead of partners who shared a life? "I miss this," Laura whispered, "just being held." "Me too." They stayed like that until the timer on Laura's phone went off, reminding her to take her evening medication. The mundane interruption broke the spell, and they separated, both slightly embarrassed by the intimacy. The following days established a new pattern. They were tentative with each other, careful, feeling their way through unfamiliar territory. They had dinner together every night, talking about their days, sharing stories, slowly rebuilding the foundation of friendship that had crumbled. They watched movies on the couch with a deliberate foot of space between them, fighting the urge to close the distance too quickly. They said goodnight at their separate bedroom doors, kisses kept brief and sweet. It was agonizing and perfect in equal measure. Daniel's brother called midweek, suspicious and concerned. Maya says you and Laura are back together. We're trying something, yeah. Are you out of your mind? Possibly. Marcus sighed heavily. I'm not going to talk you out of this, am I? Nope. Fine. But I'm telling you now, if she breaks your heart again, I'm allowed to say I told you so. Noted. And if you're happy, if this actually works, then what? Then I'll buy you both dinner and apologize for doubting. But Danny, make sure you're protecting yourself. Don't give everything and leave nothing for you. After they hung up, Daniel thought about that. Was he protecting himself? Or was he diving in head first the way he always did, all or nothing, heart wide open to be shattered? He found Laura in her room, working at the small desk by the window. Can I ask you something? He said from the doorway. Sure. How do we know we're not just repeating the past? How do we know this is actually different? Laura saved her work, turned to face him. Honest answer? We don't. We can't know for sure, but I think the fact that we're asking the question is a good sign. How so? Because before we just assumed everything was fine until it wasn't. We didn't check in, didn't course correct. We're not doing that this time. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. What are we doing? Building something new on an old foundation, taking the good parts of what we had and leaving the bad parts behind. And if the foundation is too cracked, then we'll find out and we'll deal with it. But I don't think it is. She stood, crossed to where he stood. I think we built something strong once. We just didn't maintain it, let it fall into disrepair. But the bones are still good. Mixing metaphors now? Shut up, she smiled. You know what I mean. I do. She kissed him, and he pulled her closer, deepening it before remembering their agreement to take things slow. He pulled back reluctantly. Sorry, got carried away. Don't apologize. Laura's voice was rough. But maybe we should set some more specific boundaries, because slow is getting harder. They sat on her bed, careful to keep some distance, and talked it through. What they were comfortable with, what they wanted to wait for. It was awkward and honest and necessary. I don't want to rush into the physical stuff and use it to avoid dealing with the real issues, Laura said. That's what we did before. When things got hard, we'd fall into bed and pretend everything was fine. I remember. So maybe we wait until we're sure this is solid, until we've worked through some of the bigger stuff. Daniel wanted to argue, wanted to say the physical connection mattered too, was part of healing, but he understood what she meant, understood the need to build slowly, carefully. Okay, he agreed. We wait. You're not mad? I'm frustrated, but not mad. There's a difference. Laura laughed. Fair enough. They spent the evening in the living room, Laura reading while Daniel worked on sketches for a project. The companionable silence felt like progress, like they were learning to exist together again without constant conversation, without needing to fill every moment. Around 10, Laura closed her book with a yawn. I should sleep. Physical therapy in the morning. How's that going? Good. Really good. Rachel says I'm ahead of schedule. That's great. Laura stood, stretched. Daniel? Yeah? I'm glad we're doing this, even if it's scary. Me too. She kissed his forehead, a casual intimacy that felt monumental, and headed to her room. Daniel sat there a while longer, thinking about how strange and wonderful it was to be falling in love with the same person twice, to discover new things about someone you thought you knew completely, to build something new from pieces of the past. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. How's it going? He typed back, good, slow but good. That's good, slow is good. Love you both. Love you too, sweetheart. The weekend arrived cold and gray, December settling in with frost-covered mornings and early darkness. Laura was strong enough now to go out for longer walks, and Saturday morning she asked if Daniel wanted to join her. They bundled up against the cold and walked through the quiet neighborhood, past houses strung with Christmas lights and wreaths on doors. Their breath puffed white in the air. Their hands bumped occasionally, but neither made a move to link fingers. I've been thinking about the apartment, Laura said after a while. Daniel's stomach clenched. Yeah? My lease is up in January. I need to decide if I'm renewing. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should keep it, keep that independence, keep my own space. And the other part? Laura stopped walking, turned to face him. The other part wonders why I'd pay rent on a place I never sleep in when I'm perfectly happy where I am. Are you? Happy where you are? Yes. No hesitation. But I don't want to assume this is your house, your space, and just because we're trying this doesn't mean you signed up for a permanent roommate. Daniel chose his words carefully. If you want to keep the apartment as a safety net, I understand. But if you're asking whether I want you here, the answer is yes. I want you here. Even though it's fast, even though we're supposed to be taking things slow, you've been living here for over a month already. That ship has sailed. Laura laughed, the sound bright in the cold air. Fair point. But it's your decision, whatever makes you comfortable. They resumed walking, turning down a street lined with tall oaks, their bare branches reaching toward the gray sky. I'll think about it, Laura said. Take your time. But Daniel hoped she'd stay. Hoped she'd choose to be there, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because home was where they were building something new together. They circled back to the house, cheeks pink from the cold, and Daniel made hot chocolate while Laura built a fire. They settled on the couch, closer than they'd been sitting lately, the need for warmth overriding their careful distance. Tell me something I don't know about you, Laura said suddenly. What? We spent 15 years together, got divorced, and now we're starting over. There must be things we never talked about, so tell me something I don't know. Daniel thought about it. I almost didn't call you. That first time we met, when you gave me your number at that party, I stared at it for 3 days, convinced you'd given me a fake number or wouldn't remember me. I remember you calling at 11 at night. I'd almost given up. I'd almost talked myself out of it 20 times. He smiled at the memory. Best call I ever made. Okay, my turn. I always hated that painting we had in the bedroom, the abstract one with all the blue. Are you serious? I thought you loved that painting. I tolerated it because you loved it, and I didn't want to hurt your feelings. Laura, we could have just gotten a different painting. I know, but by the time I realized I should say something, it felt too late, like I'd already committed to the lie. Daniel shook his head, laughing. What other lies did you commit to? Oh, I'm just getting started. They spent the afternoon trading confessions. Small things, mostly. Laura admitted she'd always found his business partner annoying. Daniel confessed he'd never liked her famous lasagna as much as he'd claimed. She revealed she'd been the one who broke the antique vase his mother had given them, not the cat. He admitted he'd known and hadn't cared because he'd never liked the vase anyway. It was silly and trivial and somehow deeply important, like they were cleaning out closets full of old secrets, making room for honesty. Why didn't we do this before? Laura asked eventually. Just talk like this? I don't know. Life got in the way. Work, bills, raising Maya. We stopped making time for each other. We can't do that again. We won't. Promise? Daniel held out his pinky finger. Promise. Laura linked her pinky with his, the childhood gesture absurdly sweet. If I stay, we need to establish some house rules. Like what? Like we each get our own space. You have your workshop in the garage. I need somewhere for my design work. The guest room is already yours. And we share household responsibilities equally. I'm not your guest and you're not my caretaker anymore. We're partners. Agreed. And we have a weekly check-in, a time where we sit down and honestly talk about how things are going, what's working, what's not. Daniel considered this. Like a relationship status meeting? Exactly like that. Okay, I can do that. And we tell each other when we need alone time. No guilt, no questions, just honest communication about needs. You've been thinking about this. I have. Laura squeezed his hand. Because I want this to work, really work. And that means being intentional about it. I want that too. They sat there as afternoon faded into evening, fire crackling, planning a future neither was entirely sure of, but both were willing to try for. It felt fragile and strong at the same time, like glass that had been shattered and carefully pieced back together. Different than before. Maybe better. That night, After Laura went to bed, Daniel called the landlord of her apartment building and asked about lease termination options. He wanted to give her the choice to stay without the financial burden of two residences making the decision for her. It felt right, like he was supporting her independence while hoping she'd choose him anyway. The next morning, he told her what he'd done. "You called my landlord? I just asked about options. I didn't commit to anything. That's your choice. But I didn't want money to be the deciding factor." Laura stared at him. That's really thoughtful. Thank you. So? So I'm going to give notice. Let the lease end. Yeah? Yeah, she smiled. I'm staying, if you'll have me. Always. She kissed him, and this time when things heated up, neither of them pulled away quite so quickly. They ended up on the couch, tangled together, relearning the geography of each other's bodies, hands remembering old paths, mouths finding familiar places. It was sweet and desperate, and everything Daniel had been holding back for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Laura laughed shakily. So much for slow. We can still be slow. Can we? Her eyes were dark, pupils blown wide. We can try. They did try. Made it another few days before slow became impossible, before the need to reconnect completely overwhelmed the need for caution. On a Tuesday night, after a bottle of wine and an honest conversation about what they both wanted, Laura took Daniel's hand and led him upstairs. "Are you sure?" he asked at the threshold of his bedroom. "I'm terrified, but I'm sure." They made love slowly, carefully, like they were discovering each other for the first time. In some ways they were. These were different bodies than the ones that had last touched 3 years ago. Different hearts, different hopes. It was familiar and new and devastating and perfect. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Laura's head on his chest, her breathing evening into sleep, Daniel felt something settle in his chest. A rightness he hadn't felt in years, like a piece of himself he'd lost had finally found its way home. The morning after felt both monumental and ordinary. Daniel woke to find Laura still asleep beside him, her hair spread across the pillow, one hand curled under her chin. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting everything in soft gold. He lay there watching her breathe, afraid to move and break the spell, afraid this was a dream he'd wake from to find himself alone again. But then Laura's eyes opened, still heavy with sleep, and she smiled at him, a real smile, unguarded and warm. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself. Did you sleep?" "Some. You?" "Better than I have in years." She stretched, winced slightly as her healing ribs protested. "Still sore, but worth it." Daniel propped himself up on one elbow. "Any regrets? About last night?" "No." She reached up, touched his face. "About moving too fast?" "Maybe a little, but mostly no." "We can slow down again if you need to." Laura laughed softly. "I think we're past that now. Besides, slow wasn't really working for either of us." They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking quietly, touching gently, relearning intimacy. Eventually, hunger drove them downstairs where they made breakfast together, moving around each other in the kitchen with an ease that felt earned. "I should call Maya," Laura said, pouring coffee, "before she shows up unannounced and figures it out." "What are you going to tell her?" "The truth. That we're together, really together." "She'll probably have thoughts." "She always has thoughts." They called after breakfast, putting the phone on speaker between them at the table. Maya answered on the first ring. "Okay. What happened? You both sound different." Laura and Daniel exchanged glances. Her voice did have a different quality. Lighter, somehow. Happier. "We need to update you on some things," Laura started. "Oh my God, did you have sex?" "Maya!" "What? I'm an adult. You're adults. It's a reasonable question given that you're trying to reconcile and living together. And did you?" Daniel cleared his throat. "That's not really—" "You totally did. I can hear it in your voices. Oh my God!" "Sweetheart, can we please have a conversation without you narrating every detail?" Maya laughed, delighted. Sorry. I'm just happy for you." "Assuming you are happy? This is a good development?" "It's a good development," Laura confirmed, her hand finding Daniel's across the table. We're taking this seriously. Building something real. Good. That's good. Maya's voice softened. I know I joked, but I really am happy. And scared for you, both of you, but mostly happy. They talked for another 20 minutes before Maya had to leave for class. After they hung up, Laura looked at Daniel with something vulnerable in her eyes. That makes it real, she said, telling Maya, admitting we're actually doing this. Having second thoughts? No, just first time being this honest thoughts. The days that followed brought their own challenges. Living together as a couple instead of caretaker and patient required adjustments neither had fully anticipated. They had their first real argument 3 days later over something stupid. Daniel working late without calling, Laura rearranging his kitchen cabinets without asking. Small things that touched on bigger issues. You're shutting me out again, Laura said when he came home to find her tight-lipped and distant. Working late, not communicating. This is exactly what happened before. I had a deadline. I texted you. A text that said running late with no context or timeline isn't communication, Daniel. It's notification. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he'd been drowning in a project that had gone sideways and hadn't wanted to burden her. But that was the old pattern, the one they'd promised to break. You're right, he said instead. I should have called. Should have given you more information. I'm sorry. Laura blinked, clearly expecting more fight. Oh, okay. I got overwhelmed and fell back into old habits, but that's not fair to you. And I maybe overreacted because I was scared you were pulling away. She uncrossed her arms. I should have asked instead of assuming. They stood in the kitchen, both slightly amazed that an argument had been diffused instead of escalated. It felt like progress, like maybe they actually could do this differently. So what now? Daniel asked. Now we remember this feeling next time we want to fall into old patterns. Laura moved closer, looped her arms around his neck. And we keep choosing to be different. I can do that. Me too. They kissed and made dinner together and talked through the rest of it. Why the project had stressed him, why she'd been anxious about him being late, what they could do better next time. It was hard and honest, and nothing like the silent treatments and passive aggression that had defined their first marriage. Their first check-in happened on Sunday evening, both of them settling on the couch with tea and determination. How are we doing? Laura asked, pulling her feet up under her. Honest assessment. Daniel thought about it. Good. I think. We're communicating better. The fight on Thursday was actually productive. I feel like we're building something solid. Me too, but I'm worried we're in a honeymoon phase, that we're both on our best behavior and eventually we'll slide back into who we were. Then we catch ourselves. We have these check-ins. We stay honest. What about the hard stuff we haven't dealt with yet? Laura set down her tea. Like why we really fell apart the first time. We've talked around it, but not through it. Daniel had been dreading this conversation, but knew it was necessary. Okay, let's talk through it. Laura took a breath. I think we stopped seeing each other. You became so focused on building the business, on being a provider, that you forgot to be a partner. And I let my whole identity become wrapped up in being a wife and mother that I forgot to be myself. I remember working constantly, thinking if I could just make enough money, give you security, that would be enough. That would prove I loved you. But I didn't need financial security. I needed you, present and engaged. I needed conversations that weren't about bills or schedules. I needed to feel like you still wanted to know me. The words hurt because they were true. Daniel had poured everything into work, convinced he was doing it for his family, never realizing he was losing them in the process. And you stopped telling me what you needed, he said gently. You pulled away too, started keeping things to yourself. Because you seemed so stressed already. How could I add to that by saying I was lonely? That felt selfish. But that's exactly what you should have said. That's what I needed to hear. Laura wiped her eyes. We were both so bad at this. Yeah, we were. They sat in the hard truth of it for a moment. Then Laura spoke again, voice steadier. So how do we not do that again? We remember this conversation. We remember what happens when we don't communicate. And we make each other a priority, not an afterthought. Even when work gets crazy, especially then. Daniel took her hand. I'm not saying I won't mess up, but I'm saying when I start slipping, you call me on it. And when you start pulling away, I do the same. Deal. They talked for another hour, excavating old hurts and misunderstandings, finally saying things that should have been said years ago. It was exhausting and painful and absolutely necessary. By the time they finished, Daniel felt wrung out but lighter somehow, like they'd lanced an old wound and could finally heal properly. December deepened into the kind of cold that made the house feel like a refuge from the world. Daniel and Laura fell into comfortable rhythms, morning coffee together before work, evening meals at the table, weekends spent fixing up the house, or just existing in each other's company. Laura's belongings gradually migrated from the guest room to Daniel's room, until one day she realized she hadn't slept in the guest bed in over a week. I think I'm officially moved in, she said one evening, surveying the mixed clothes in the closet, her books on the nightstand. Took you long enough. Shut up, I was being cautious. How's that working out? Terribly, I'm wildly, stupidly happy, and it's freaking me out. Daniel pulled her close. Want to freak out together? Always. Maya came home for winter break a week before Christmas, pulling into the driveway with Connor in tow. Daniel had met him briefly at Thanksgiving, but this was different. The boyfriend coming to stay in the house where her parents were newly back together. The whole situation felt like a powder keg of potential awkwardness. But Connor was easy and kind, deferring to Maya's parents without being obsequious, helping with dinner without being asked. And Maya seemed genuinely happy, lighter than Daniel had seen her in years. They're good together, Laura observed one evening while the kids were out with friends. Yeah, he seems solid. Remember when we were that young, that sure everything would work out? We made it work out eventually, just took a detour. Laura smiled. A 3-year detour through divorce and near-death experiences. The scenic route. On Christmas Eve, they decorated the tree together, all 4 of them, Christmas music playing while they argued good-naturedly about ornament placement. Daniel pulled out this box of decorations from his marriage to Laura, half expecting her to want them gone. But she sorted through them with gentle hands, pulling out favorites. I can't believe you kept these, she said, holding up a handmade ornament Maya had created in kindergarten. Of course I kept them. They're our history. Our history. I like that. She hung the ornament carefully. I like that we get to keep the good parts. That night, after Maya and Connor went to bed, Daniel and Laura sat by the tree with glasses of wine, the house quiet around them. I have something for you, Laura said, retrieving a small wrapped box from behind the couch. We said no gifts. We said no big gifts. This is small. Daniel opened it to find a watch, nothing expensive or flashy, just a simple, clean design. But when he turned it over, there was an engraving on the back. For all the time we have left. His throat tightened. Laura, I know we can't get back the years we lost, but we have now. We have whatever comes next, and I don't want to waste another second of it. He kissed her, the watch clutched in one hand, the other tangled in her hair. When they broke apart, he pulled a small box from his own hiding spot. Apparently, we both had the same idea. Laura opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet. The charm was simple. A small oak tree, branches spreading wide. For the tree in the backyard, Daniel explained, where everything changed, where we chose to try again. She put it on with shaking hands, the charm catching the light from the tree. It's perfect. They sat there together, gifts exchanged, promises unspoken but understood. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain but full of possibility. Christmas morning was chaos in the best way. Maya and Connor made breakfast while Laura and Daniel watched from the couch, content to let the younger generation take over. They exchanged gifts, laughed at terrible jokes, ate too much, and existed in the warm bubble of family. Later, when Maya pulled her mother aside in the kitchen, Daniel pretended not to watch from the living room. You look happy, Mom, Maya said quietly. I am happy. Like really happy, not just pretending happy. Really happy, Laura confirmed. Terrifyingly happy. Good. You deserve that. Maya hugged her mother. You both do. The winter passed in a blur of small moments that added up to something significant. Daniel and Laura worked through conflicts when they arose, had their weekly check-ins even when things were good, made space for individual pursuits and shared experiences. Laura's design business grew. Daniel's company landed a major contract. They supported each other's successes and softened each other's failures. In February, they had their biggest fight since getting back together. Daniel had agreed to have dinner with a potential client without checking with Laura first, forgetting they'd planned to celebrate the anniversary of the night she'd moved in. It was a small thing that touched on big fears, being taken for granted, not being a priority, falling back into old patterns. Laura was hurt and angry. Daniel was defensive and frustrated. They said things sharper than they meant, voices rising in the kitchen they'd so carefully learned to share. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Laura said, tears streaming down her face. "That eventually you'd go back to putting work first, and I'd go back to being an afterthought. One missed dinner doesn't mean I don't prioritize you. It's not about one dinner, it's about what it represents. It's about whether we've actually changed or if we're just playing at it." The accusation landed hard. Daniel felt his anger drain away, replaced by something closer to fear. Because she was right to be scared. He had slipped back into old habits without noticing. "You're right," he said quietly. "I messed up. Not just forgetting the dinner, but not even thinking to check with you first. Like my schedule matters more than ours." Laura wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't want to fight." "Neither do I. But maybe we need to sometimes. Maybe fighting and working through it is how we stay honest." "I hate that you might be right." Despite everything, Daniel almost smiled. "Come here." She crossed to him reluctantly and he pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a moment before softening against him. "I'm canceling the dinner," he said into her hair. "Don't do that. Just reschedule our celebration." "No, I'm canceling because you matter more than any client, and I need to prove that with actions, not just words." Laura pulled back to look at him. "You're sure?" "Completely sure." He called the client right there, rescheduled for the following week, and then took Laura out to the same restaurant where they'd celebrated Maya's birthday before the accident, where they'd sat across from each other as polite strangers and pretended everything was fine. "It's different this time," Laura said, looking around the familiar space. "Everything is." They toasted to second chances and hard conversations and the courage to keep showing up even when it was scary. The fight didn't magically fix everything, but it proved they could weather conflict and come out stronger, that they could choose each other even when it was hard. March brought warmer weather and the first hints of spring. Laura's physical therapy finally ended, her doctor pronouncing her fully healed. The last visible reminder of the accident, a small scar on her temple, had faded to almost nothing. "It's strange," she said one morning, touching the scar while looking in the mirror. "Part of me wants to keep it. A reminder of what brought us back together. You don't need a scar for that. We have the tree. And each other. Sentimental. You love it." "I do," she admitted, turning to face him. "I love a lot of things about this second chance." They were more intentional now about carving out time for each other. Date nights became sacred. Morning coffee together was non-negotiable. They took walks, cooked together, talked about everything from the mundane to the profound. And slowly, what had felt fragile and new began to feel solid and lasting. In April, Maya graduated from college. Daniel and Laura sat together at the ceremony, hands clasped, watching their daughter cross the stage. Afterward, at the celebratory dinner, Maya stood to make a toast. "I want to thank my parents," she said, looking between them, "for showing me that love isn't about never failing. It's about getting back up when you do. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Her eyes filled with tears. "You taught me that by example, even when it hurt, even when it was messy. Thank you for not giving up, on yourselves or each other." Laura was crying openly now. Daniel's eyes burned. Maya sat back down and Connor squeezed her hand while both parents tried to compose themselves. "We have a good kid," Daniel managed. "The best kid," Laura agreed. That night, back at the house, they stood in the backyard under the oak tree that had witnessed so much of their story. The leaves were full now, providing shade and shelter. "Do you ever think about getting remarried?" Laura asked suddenly. Daniel's heart stuttered. "Is that something you want?" "I don't know. Maybe. Eventually." I just know I don't want this to feel temporary anymore. I want to choose this, choose us, in a way that feels permanent. We don't need a wedding for that. No, but it might be nice to stand up in front of people and promise to keep choosing each other, to acknowledge we're not the same people who got divorced. We're new versions who learned from old mistakes. Daniel pulled her closer. Are you proposing to me? I'm floating the idea of a proposal. Maybe. Very romantic. Shut up. She smiled against his chest. I'm serious, though. I want this to be real. Forever real. It already is. Has been since the night you kissed me under this tree. When did you get so sure? When you stayed. When you kept staying even when it was hard. When you fought with me instead of shutting down. When you let me see the scared parts and trusted me to handle them gently. Laura looked up at him, eyes bright. Ask me. What? Ask me. Right now, under our tree. Daniel's pulse raced. This wasn't how he'd imagined it. No ring, no plan, just the two of them in the backyard on a random Tuesday. But it was perfect. It was them. He took both her hands. Laura Miles, will you marry me again? Will you keep choosing this messy, imperfect, beautiful thing we're building? Yes, absolutely yes. They kissed under the spreading branches, the tree that had grown alongside their daughter, that had witnessed their first attempt and now their second chance. The tree that would keep growing, keep reaching toward the sky, a living reminder of what they'd built together. They told Maya the next day. She screamed with joy and immediately started planning, already texting ideas for a small ceremony, talking about flowers and food and whether they'd write their own vows. When are you thinking? She asked, barely pausing for breath. Daniel and Laura looked at each other. They'd talked late into the night after the proposal, figuring out what they wanted. Fall, Laura said. October, maybe. Small ceremony, just family and close friends, nothing fancy. Can I help plan? We're counting on it. The months between proposal and wedding were both rushed and perfectly paced. They didn't want a long engagement, didn't see the point when they were already committed, already living the life they wanted. They'd spent enough time apart. Why wait to make it official? The ceremony happened on a perfect October afternoon in the backyard under the oak tree. Maya officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. Connor stood as Daniel's best man. Laura's best friend from college stood with her. Marcus was there, protective but happy. A handful of other friends and family filled the folding chairs they'd set up on the grass. Laura wore a simple cream dress, flowers in her hair. Daniel wore his best suit, the watch she'd given him on his wrist. They'd written their own vows, of course. Couldn't imagine saying words someone else had written. When it came time, Daniel spoke first, voice steady despite the emotion in his chest. Laura, I stood here once before and promised to love you forever. I meant it then, but I didn't understand what it would cost. Didn't understand that forever means choosing you every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I failed at that the first time. Let work and fear and pride get in the way. But you gave me another chance. A chance I didn't deserve, but will spend the rest of my life earning. I promised to show up, to communicate, to see you and hear you and choose you every day, in big ways and small ways, for whatever forever we have left. Laura was crying before she even started speaking, but her voice was clear when she did. Daniel, 3 years ago I walked away from us because I thought I was disappearing. Thought I needed to find myself alone. But here's what I learned. I wasn't disappearing. I was just hiding. From hard conversations, from my own needs, from the work it takes to maintain love. You gave me a second chance to do better, to be braver, to fight for us instead of running. I promise to keep fighting, to speak up when I'm struggling, to ask for what I need, to believe in our ability to weather storms together, and to never ever take for granted the gift of being chosen by you, again and again and again. Maya pronounced them married through tears. Everyone clapped. Daniel kissed his wife like it was the first time and the 1,000th time all at once. The reception was simple. Good food, better wine, dancing on the grass as the sun set. Maya gave a toast that made everyone cry. Marcus gave one that made everyone laugh. Daniel and Laura's first dance was to the same song they'd danced to at their first wedding, but it felt completely different now. earned instead of assumed, hard-won instead of given. As the evening wore on and guests started to leave, Daniel found himself standing with Laura at the edge of the gathering, watching their friends and family celebrate. "Happy?" he asked. "Ridiculously happy. Any regrets?" "Only that we wasted 3 years." "Not wasted, just a different path to get here." Laura leaned into him. "You really believe that?" "I do. We needed those years apart to become people who could do this right. We needed to fail the first time to appreciate succeeding the second time." "When did you get so wise?" "When I almost lost you and realized I'd do anything to get you back." The last guests left around midnight. Maya and Connor helped clean up, then headed to bed, leaving Daniel and Laura alone in the backyard. Someone had left the string lights on, casting everything in warm gold. "Thank you," Laura said quietly. "For what?" "For answering the phone that night, for staying at the hospital, for offering me the guest room, for giving us a chance when it would have been easier to keep your distance. There was never any other option, not for me. I love you, not the way I loved you before. Better than that. More honestly. I love you too. This version and every version." They stood under the oak tree, the same tree that had witnessed their proposal, their wedding, their entire second chance. The branches swayed in the October breeze, leaves just starting to turn. Winter would come, then spring, then summer again. Seasons cycling endlessly, but they'd weather them together now. Had promised to. Had chosen to. Later, lying in bed in the dark, Laura's head on Daniel's chest, she spoke into the silence. "Do you think we would have made it back to each other without the accident?" Daniel thought about it. About the call at 3 a.m, about everything that had spiraled from that moment. "I don't know, maybe eventually. Or maybe we would have stayed divorced, polite strangers at Maya's big life events. There's no way to know. I hate that it took almost dying for us to fix this. But you didn't die. You're right here. We're right here." Laura pressed closer. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise we won't wait for another disaster to remember what matters. Promise we'll fight for this every single day. I promise. We both will." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the house quiet around them. Outside, the oak tree stood sentinel in the darkness, its roots deep, its branches strong. It had weathered storms and seasons, had grown steadily upward and outward, had provided shelter and beauty for 15 years. It would stand for many more. And beneath its branches, two people who'd loved and loved again would keep building their life together, would keep choosing each other through ordinary days and extraordinary challenges, would keep remembering that sometimes the greatest gift is a second chance, that sometimes the phone rings at 3 a.m. and changes everything, that sometimes you have to lose something to understand its worth, that sometimes love means showing up even when you're scared, especially when you're scared, and that sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, you get to come home to the person you never should have left in the first place. The story of Daniel and Laura didn't end with their second wedding. It continued in 1,000 small moments, morning coffee and evening walks, arguments and reconciliations, laughter and tears, and the everyday work of choosing each other. It continued in the life they built together, intentionally this time, with eyes wide open to both the beauty and the difficulty. It continued under the oak tree, which kept growing, kept reaching, kept standing strong through every season. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.